The mafia boss was surrounded on all sides until the single mom waitress stepped between him and the bullets. The rain was not just rain, it was an accusation. It hammered the asphalt outside the Blue Comet Diner, turning the Illinois highway into a slick, black mirror inside. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and desperation. Lila Hart, 27 years old, moved through it like a ghost in a pale blue uniform. She balanced 3 plates on one arm, her smile practiced, automatic. It never reached her eyes. Lila worked the graveyard shift. It was the only way. Her son, Milo, 6 years old, slept on a cot in the dry storage room, his small lungs a constant, fragile worry. The asthma was bad this season. The medical bills piled up on her kitchenette counter back home, a mountain of debt she chipped away at with quarters and single-dollar bills left on greasy tables. Joliet was a tough town, but being a single mother with a sick child was its own kind of war. A tremor ran through the diner. It was not the thunder. A convoy of 3 matte black SUVs, windows tinted to absolute zero, slid past the fogged-up windows. They had no license plates. The few truckers hunched over their meals went rigid, heads dipped. Eyes studied the patterns in their coffee mugs. You did not look at cars like that on this stretch of road. Lila, however, watched. She set down a pot of hot tea for a table of long-haul drivers, her movements economical, discreet. She saw the vehicles parked near the edge of the lot, away from the weak yellow glow of the streetlights. They were shadows waiting. On the small television mounted in the corner, a local news anchor spoke with manufactured gravity. Authorities from both the Federal Commerce Integrity Bureau and the Metropolitan Violent Crimes Unit confirmed today they are intensifying their investigation into alleged financial crimes linked to Armin Durian. A grainy photo flashed on the screen, a man with dark hair, severe features, and eyes that looked like chipped obsidian. Durian, reputed head of the Chicago-based Durian outfit. The bell above the diner door chimed, cutting through the anchor's voice. The sound was too bright, too cheerful for the men who entered. It was him, Armin Durian. He moved with a stillness that sucked the air from the room. He was not loud, but his presence was a physical weight. He wore a tailored suit that probably cost more than Lila's car. Flanking him were 2 figures, a woman, Inessa, with a sharp bob and a tablet clutched to her chest like armor, a man, Levon, built like a refrigerator, his gaze constantly moving, scanning every booth, every exit. The storm chose that moment to unleash. Hail began to crack against the thin metal roof, a frantic drumming. The Blue Comet neon sign outside the window sputtered BLW Comet flickering, casting erratic flashes of cobalt and crimson across Armin's face, a bad omen. Lila picked up a menu. Professionalism was her shield. Just the 3 of you tonight. She walked them to the back booth, the one with the cracked vinyl. She avoided his eyes, focusing instead on the polished wood of the table. Levon slid in first, taking the seat that faced the door. Inessa sat opposite, immediately opening her tablet. Armand remained standing, shrugging off his wet coat. Lila forced the polite smile. "Can I start you with some coffee?" He looked at her. Really looked. It was not a leer. Nothing like what the truckers gave her. It was an assessment. Cold, quick, and absolute. Lila felt pinned, analyzed. She resisted the urge to tug at her apron. Then, from the storage room, it came. A dry, rasping sound, a cough, then another, tighter, panicked. "Milo." The practiced smile vanished. Lila dropped the menu and spun, her heart seizing. "Milo." She shoved past a rack of pie trays, running toward the kitchen. "Excuse me." The voice was low, resonant. Armin Durian had not moved, but he had shifted just enough to block her path to the kitchen door. He was in her way. "My son," Lila gasped, panic making her voice sharp. "He can't breathe. I need to get—" The coughing fit intensified, turning into a desperate, whistling gasp. Armin stepped aside instantly. As she rushed past, he extended his hand. In it was a folded square of dark, heavy silk, a pocket square. "For the boy," he said. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. It was the briefest collision. Her raw, maternal panic against his profound, unsettling calm. Lila did not take the handkerchief. She burst through the swinging door, grabbing the emergency inhaler from her bag and rushing to Milo's cot. She held her son upright, pressing the atomizer to his lips, whispering, "Breathe. Baby, breathe with Mommy. That's it, slow." Outside in the rain-swept parking lot, two men sat in a mud-splattered sedan. They were MVCU. "He's in. The package is with him," the driver murmured into a lapel mic. "We hold until the handoff. FCIB wants the data in transit." Further down the highway, in a dark turnout, a different conversation was happening. A gruff voice crackled over an unsecured radio frequency, the signal bleeding slightly into the diner's AM receiver. "Target is static at the diner. We make the move tonight. Huron Yard is too hot. We do it right here." Lila heard the static, the fragmented words as she walked back out, Milo now breathing easier but still shaken. Clinging to her neck, she settled him in the booth farthest from the door, giving him a sugar packet to play with. She overheard the truckers in the next booth muttering, "Accounting server handover appointment at Huron Yard." She did not understand the language, but the tone was urgent. It was just noise. But a cold knot of dread tightened in her stomach. She went to clear Armin's table. They were speaking in low Armenian, Inessa's fingers flying across her tablet. Lila reached for empty water glasses, keeping her head down. Lying on the table, forgotten, was a photograph. It was slightly blurred, creased, as if carried in a wallet for a long time. A younger man, smiling, with the same dark eyes as Armin. Beside it, a small silver lighter. Scribbled on a napkin beneath the photo were two words, "Who sold out?" Lila's hand hesitated. She should not have seen it. She went to slide the photo back onto the napkin, a reflex of tidiness. Her finger brushed the edge of the photograph. It was sticky, not with spilled coffee. It was the faint, acrid smell of smoke and residue, a scent that did not belong in a diner. It was a tiny, insignificant detail, but it was the first thread, the one that, when pulled, would unravel everything. It was past midnight. The rain had settled into a cold, driving drizzle. Armin Durian stood, placing a few bills on the table far too much for 3 coffees. He nodded once, a curt dismissal. Levon rose, his hand inside his jacket, and Inessa snapped her tablet shut. She was carrying a heavy, reinforced aluminum briefcase, a server, shaped like a valise. The bell on the diner door chimed. They stepped out onto the wet concrete. "Freeze federal agents' hands where we can see them." Headlights flooded the parking lot, multiple vehicles appearing from the darkness. Men in dark blue vests marked MVCU advanced, weapons raised. "Mr. Durian, you are being detained for the transportation of illicit financial data." Armin did not raise his hands. Levon stepped in front of him, shielding him. "We have permits for..." The first shot did not come from the cops. It came from the darkness. A high-velocity crack that sounded completely different from the MVCU's weapons. The passenger window of the lead federal vehicle exploded into 1,000 tiny diamonds. "Ambush, take cover," an agent screamed. The parking lot erupted. From the shadows beyond the highway fence, a third force unleashed a torrent of automatic fire. The Costa Syndicate. They were not there to arrest Armin. They were there to claim the server and leave no witnesses. Bullets tore through the thin metal of the diner's facade. The blue Comet sign exploded in a shower of sparks and glass tubing, plunging the lot into near total darkness, lit only by muzzle flashes. Lila screamed, diving for Milo, pulling him from the booth and dragging him behind the main counter. "Stay down, baby. Close your eyes." Outside, it was chaos. Levon shoved Armin toward the sturdy brick corner of the diner, near the ice machine. "Boss, the car." Levon fired 3 precise shots toward a flash on the fence line before a spray of bullets stitched across his chest and shoulder. He grunted, stumbling, sliding down the wall. his weapon clattering to the pavement. Armin was pinned. The MVCU agents were now in a gunfight with the Costa shooters, yelling about jurisdiction and crossfire, but they were just as pinned. One of the black SUVs ignited, a fireball roaring into the sky, casting grotesque, dancing shadows. The smell of gasoline and burning rubber flooded the air. Smoke poured into the diner through the shattered windows. Milo began to cough, a deep, rattling hack that tore at Lila's soul. The smoke was too thick. She held him tight, her own lungs burning. She peered over the Formica counter. She could see Armin, pressed against the vending machine, the light from the burning vehicle illuminating him. He was exposed. Levon was down. Anessa was gone, likely with the server. And then Lila saw it, a single, small, ruby-red dot. It danced across the brick wall near Armin, then steadied, painting a precise circle directly over his heart. A laser sight, a sniper. Armin was checking Levon, his attention diverted for the 1 second that would end his life. Lila did not think. She did not weigh the options. She did not consider the mafia, the police, or the danger. She saw a man about to be executed, and she heard her son coughing from the smoke of the fire that man's enemies had started. It was a purely maternal reflex, the instinct to shield, to protect, to stand in the way. She grabbed the one thing she had, a round, stainless steel serving tray, heavy and polished. "No!" she yelled, a sound that was mostly air and adrenaline. She launched herself from behind the counter, moving with a speed she did not know she possessed. She burst through the shattered glass door frame, covered the 10 feet of pavement, and slammed her body into Armin Durian's side, shoving him down. Simultaneously, she raised the tray, angling it up toward the garage roof across the street. The sound was deafening. Ping, thwack, thwack. 3 bullets slammed into the steel tray. The impacts were so violent they tore the tray from her grasp, the metal shrieking as it spun away. But the laser dot was gone. The shots had been deflected. Armin hit the wet ground, pulling her down with him. For a moment they were a tangle of limbs, the air screaming around them. He looked at her, his cold eyes wide with a flicker of disbelief. Then he saw Milo, still wheezing by the diner door. His focus shifted. He grabbed Milo, tucking the boy against his chest with one arm, and wrapped his other arm around Lila's waist. "Roll," he commanded. He used his legs, pushing them all backward, rolling over the wet pavement until they slammed against the solid steel of a parked pickup truck. They were shielded. For now. Lila gasped, sucking in air, her hands shaking so violently she could not clench her fists, but her eyes were clear. She scanned the chaos and found him, the sniper, a dark shape on the roof of the auto garage across the 4-lane highway. "He's reloading," Lila choked out, "on the garage roof." Armin looked at Levon, who was bleeding badly but conscious. "We have to move." Lila's eyes darted. The fire, the smoke, an idea. Inside the diner door, mounted on the wall, was a red fire extinguisher. Before Armin could stop her, she scrambled back to the doorway, grabbed the heavy cylinder, pulled the pin, and aimed it not at the fire, but at the sniper's line of sight. She squeezed the handle. A massive cloud of white foam and chemical propellant erupted, blanketing the area between the truck and the diner. It created an instant, opaque wall of smoke. "Go, go," she screamed. Armin did not hesitate. He scooped up Levon, hauling the big man's arm over his shoulder. He grabbed Lila's hand. "Kitchen. Back exit, now." He moved, dragging them all through the billowing white cloud, back into the diner, past the terrified, cowering truckers, and through the swinging kitchen doors. The sounds of the gunfight were momentarily muffled, replaced by the clatter of pots and the hiss of the empty grill. The wail of approaching sirens grew louder, closer, overwhelming the sound of gunfire. The Costa shooters knew the window was closed. Tires squealed on the highway. The ambush was over. The attack had failed. Lila stumbled out the back door into the alley, leaning against the brick, her knees buckling. Milo was crying quietly. his face buried in her neck. She looked at her hands. They were raw, covered in grime and extinguisher foam, and trembling uncontrollably. The line, the simple, clean line between her life and their world, it was gone. She had not just crossed it, she had erased it. She heard a footstep. Armin was there. Levon was already in the back of one of the remaining, undamaged SUVs. Armin's face was grim. He stepped close, and for a second, Lila thought he would thank her. He did not. He pressed something small and hard into her palm, a business card, thick and metallic. It bore no name, no number, just an embossed, stylized phoenix, the Orion Trust. "They saw you," he said, his voice low and urgent. "The police, the syndicate, they saw you choose. You and the boy are not safe." He closed her fingers over the card. "If you need safety, real safety, call this number. Ask for Marcus." He turned and was gone. Lila slid down the wall until she was sitting on the wet pavement, clutching the card, her son, and the ruins of her simple life. Inside the diner, untouched by the chaos, the small, red recording light on the corner security camera blinked. It had captured everything: the MVCU moving in, the Costa ambush, and the precise, impossible moment when a single mom waitress stepped between Armin Durian and the bullets. The footage was already being uploaded to a cloud, and everyone would be looking for it. The sun rose on a world that felt gray and wrong. Lila and Milo were in a temporary shelter, a clean, beige room that smelled of disinfectant and institutional fear. Milo was asleep, his face pale, his breathing still shallow. Lila had not slept. She sat on a plastic chair, watching the dust motes dance in the single beam of light from the barred window. The door opened. A woman in a crisp, dark pantsuit entered. She carried a tablet and an air of professional empathy that Lila instantly distrusted. "Miss Hart, I'm Special Agent Avery Kincaid, Federal Commerce Integrity Bureau. I'm glad you and your son are safe." Lila just stared. Safe was the last word she would use. Kincaid sat opposite her. "The Blue Comet security footage is compelling. You're a very brave woman. You're also in a unique position. Armin Durian is alive because of you. The Costa Syndicate knows it, and the MVCU knows it." She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "We want to offer you and Milo full protective custody, a new life, new names, far away from all this. In exchange, we need your cooperation. We need you to testify about what you saw, about the server." Lila thought of the metallic card in her pocket. She thought of Armin's eyes, not cold, but disbelieving, just before she shoved him. "Testify to what? That a man was about to be shot. So I stopped it." "Testify that you saw Armin Durian in possession of a server containing stolen financial data, which he was attempting to move," Kincaid said evenly. "I saw a briefcase," Lila said, her voice flat. "I work in a diner. I don't know what was in it." Kincaid's smile was thin. "We can help you remember. Think about it, Miss Hart. This is the only way to guarantee Milo's safety." Agent Kincaid left her to consider the offer. The moment the door clicked shut, a cheap, prepaid phone on the nightstand vibrated. It had been slipped into her bag by a paramedic she did not recognize. She answered. "He was set up." The voice was female, clipped, and full of compressed energy. "Inessa. That wasn't the real server. It was a digital copy, loaded with just enough to look real. The traitor used it to get Armin and the MVCU in the same place. They wanted him arrested or killed, and the real data framed on him." Lila's mind flashed, the acrid smell of smoke on the photograph of the smiling younger man. Narek, the scribbled question, who betrayed him? The fragments of radio chatter she had overheard, the talk of Huron Yard and doing it right here. She connected the pieces. Someone was cooperating with the government. Yes, but they were not just informing. They were directing the play. They had set a trap, not just for Armin, but for the police, too. A few hours later, the FCIB moved them. A brief, frantic stop at her apartment to grab Milo's medication and clothes. 2 MVCU uniforms waited in the hall. While Lila frantically stuffed a backpack, She saw it through her living room window. A small, quad-propeller drone. It hovered about 50 feet away, just beyond the dying maple tree. It was a cheap model, but someone had painted it black. On its side was a peeling sticker, a cartoon rocket ship with the words, K's Delivery. It was clumsy, obvious, a threat from the Costa Syndicate. They knew where she lived. They were watching. Her personal phone, which Kincaid's team had cleared and returned, buzzed on the counter. A new text from an unknown number. It was a photograph. Milo, laughing on the swings in his school playground. It was an old picture from last fall. They had been watching her for weeks. Below the image, a single line of text. Pick a side, Mama. Lila's blood ran cold. The government's offer of protective custody felt like a cage, one whose lock could be picked. The Costas were at her door, her hand shaking, closed around the metallic card from Armin, the Orion Trust. She dialed the number listed on the back. A man answered on the first ring. His voice was impossibly calm, like a university lecturer. Marcus Petrosian's office. How may we assist? My name is Lila Hart, she whispered, huddling in her bathroom. I was told to call about safety for me and my son. There was no pause. We are aware of your situation, Miss Hart. A car will be on the north side of your building in exactly 3 minutes. Do not speak to the MVCU officers. Walk out the service exit. It will be unlocked. The line clicked dead. Lila grabbed Milo and the backpack. She did exactly as she was told. The black sedan was there. It took them to a converted church on the south side, a place called Shoreline Haven. It was a community center, but the doors were reinforced steel. Armin was waiting inside. He was not the man from the diner. He wore a simple gray Henley and dark pants, his suit jacket gone. He smelled faintly of gasoline and antiseptic. He looked tired, but the intensity in his eyes was brighter. You came, he said. It was not a question. They sent a picture of my son, Lila said, her voice trembling with rage. They will not touch him, Armin said. It was a vow. The government offers you a box. I'm offering you a fortress. I will put Milo under my personal protection. He will be somewhere no one can find him, with my most trusted people. But I need something from you. He gestured to Inessa, who was setting up audio equipment. The diner, the radio chatter you heard. We have the recordings. The traitor who set me up, who set everyone up, was on that frequency. I need you to listen. I need you to find that voice. Lila looked at this man, this mob boss, this target. He was the eye of the storm. I'll do it, she said, the words tasting like metal. But I have conditions. 2 of them. 1, no one innocent gets hurt because of this. I won't be part of a war. 2, my son never, ever sees a gun again. Armin studied her, his gaze lingering on the fierce, protective set of her jaw. Agreed, as if summoned by her words. Agent Kincaid called her phone. Lila let it ring. Kincaid's voicemail was curt. Lila, what are you doing? The MVCU detail at your apartment was just pulled, unilaterally. Someone high up cited lack of resources. Call me back. You are exposed. Lila hung up. She looked at Armin. The police had pulled their protection. Someone inside the MVCU had just painted a target on her back, cutting her loose for the Costas to find. She finally understood. She was not a witness for the FCIB. She was not a damsel for Armin to save. She was the one person who had seen all 3 sides, the feds, the syndicate, and the outfit. She was the only one who could navigate the space between them, and that made her the most useful and the most dangerous person in the entire godforsaken city. Shoreline Haven was quiet, but it was the quiet of a high-security server room, humming with unseen energy in the basement, which had once been a choir practice room. Inessa sat before a laptop and a digital audio workstation. Milo was in another part of the building, supervised, blissfully unaware, watching cartoons. This is it, Inessa said. She pressed a key. Static, hiss, and then the voices, digitized and thin, bleeding over the unsecured frequency. Target is static. Do it right here. Confirm. Huron Yard is a no-go. We engage at the diner. Full stop. Lila closed her eyes, shutting out the concrete room, focusing only on the sound. The voice was distorted, the signal weak. Play it again. Inessa isolated the second voice. Confirm, Huron Yard is a no-go. Wait, Lila said. There, he's trying to sound tough, but he's nervous. How do you know? Armin asked. He stood in the corner, a cup of untouched coffee in his hand. He's swallowing his T's, Lila said, listening intently. He isn't saying it's a no-go. He's saying I's a no-go. And diner. He's rounding the I. It's a central Midwest accent. Joliet, maybe Aurora. It's familiar. Inessa's fingers typed, the Costa Syndicate are mostly Eastern European. This isn't Costa, Lila insisted. This is a contractor. Inessa pulled up a new window, a screenshot from Lila's apartment, the drone with the K's delivery sticker. This was Costa's surveillance. We started a trace. Lila leaned in, staring at the cartoon rocket. A memory clicked, cold and sharp. K's delivery. That's not real. It's a joke. Talon Reed. Armin looked at her. You know him. We went to high school together, Lila said, the betrayal rising in her throat. Talon was a tech genius, always messing with circuit boards, building things. I saw him 2 weeks ago. He saw Milo's nebulizer. He said the actuator was weak, that he could 3D print a new part. He promised he'd help. Inessa was already moving, her keystrokes like weapons fire. Talon Reed, owner of a high-end fabrication lab, North Star Fab Lab, specializes in rapid prototyping and signal-dampening tech. She pulled up a map. The drone that watched Lila's apartment. Its flight path originated 2 blocks from that lab. He wasn't helping you with a nebulizer. Lila, he was building ghost shells for Costa, drones that could bypass signal trackers. Armin's face darkened. The pieces were clicking. The police, the diner, he said, half to himself. The MVCU takedown team. They arrived exactly 1 minute after I did. Too precise. He looked at Inessa. Check the traffic cameras, the ones covering the highway outside the Blue Comet. Checking, Inessa said. Interesting. The camera feed went down. When? It did not go down. It looped, a perfect 7-minute loop, starting 2 minutes before you arrived and ending just after the Costa ambush began. Someone fed the MVCU command a clean signal. Only someone on the inside could do that, Armin said. A tech specialist. Let's link them, Inessa said. She cross-referenced Talon Reed's financials. Got him? Reed's lab received a crypto payment for $50,000. The transfer was made 2 days ago. It was routed through a shell corporation. She highlighted the name. Cumulus Freight. Lila felt sick. Talon. He had smiled at her, promised to help her son, all while building surveillance tech for the men who wanted to kill her. Talon is the how, Armin said, but he's not the why. He's a contractor. We need the man who paid him, the man inside. The K's delivery app is still active on my phone, Lila said, her voice quiet, hard. They watched me. They sent me that picture of Milo. They think I'm running. They think I'm scared. Armin watched her. The trembling waitress from the diner was gone. In her place was someone cold and focused. They won't expect me to be the bait, Lila said. Lila, no, Armin started. They're using my son. They're using my friend. I'm placing an order. I'll make them meet me. Inessa prepared a decoy, a new briefcase, identical to the server, but loaded with a heavy battery and a military-grade GPS tracker. The plan was simple. Lila, pushing Milo in his stroller to look natural, would arrange a drop. Clark and Lake, she typed into the app. Package pickup. The reply was instant. On my way. The elevated platform of the Chicago Green Line rattled as the train approached. It was midday, busy. Lila stood with the stroller, the decoy briefcase at her feet. She was exposed. She felt 1,000 eyes on her. Armin was there. She knew it, but she could not see him. He was 3 cars back, a ghost in the crowd, his baseball cap pulled low. The train doors hissed open. Lila got on, pushing the stroller into the designated area. The car was half full. She sat down, her heart hammering against her ribs. At the next stop, a man got on. He was nondescript jeans, a gray utility jacket, glasses. He did not look at her. He moved to the far end of the car and pretended to read a discarded newspaper. Lila's breath caught. She watched his reflection in the dark window. He was watching her. She stood at the next stop. Randolph and Wabash. She pushed the stroller off the train. The man in the utility jacket followed, keeping his distance. She walked down the echoing concrete stairwell to the street. He stayed about 20 yards behind. Lila moved quickly, her sneakers silent. She knew this area. She ducked left, not into an empty alley, but into the bustling delivery bay of a downtown food distributor. Sacks of flour, crates of vegetables, workers yelled and pushed handcarts. The man followed her in. He was cornered. He saw her stop at the back of the depot. He started to move toward her, his hand slipping inside his jacket. "That's far enough, Roe." Armin's voice. He stepped out from behind a pallet of onions. The man Roe froze. He was trapped between them. Roe panicked. He fumbled, trying to pull his weapon. As he did, something on his belt snagged, a plastic key fob. It clattered to the dirty concrete floor. Lila saw the emblem on it, clear as day, a stylized M, a star, and the letters VCU. "Officer Isaac Roe," Armin said, his voice dangerously soft. "Tech Division, you managed the camera loop." Roe's hands flew up, shaking. Wait, you don't understand. I just did what I was told." The orders. They came from above. It was Halcomb, Deputy Chief Halcomb. He took a step back, his eyes wild with fear. "You can't touch him. He's protected by—" A sharp, almost silent thwip. Roe's eyes went wide. He looked down at his chest. A small, dark circle was spreading over his gray jacket. He made a small, gasping sound and crumpled, his head hitting a sack of potatoes. "Sniper!" Armin roared. He launched himself at Lila and the stroller, pushing them both behind a massive stainless steel ice machine. A second shot sparked off the metal where they had just been standing. Then, silence. The Costa cleanup crew. Lila was breathing in ragged, shallow gasps, her arms wrapped around Milo, who had thankfully slept through the entire thing. She was shaking, not from fear, but from a cold, profound rage. Armin looked at Roe's body, then at the MVCU key fob lying on the floor. He kicked it, sending it skittering into a drain. He gently lifted Milo from the stroller, his movements surprisingly tender, and put his other arm around Lila, pulling her upright. "They're tied together," he said, his voice a low growl of compressed fury. "Costa, Talon, and the MVCU command." He guided them out the back entrance into the anonymous rush of the Chicago afternoon. "They started this war," Armin swore, his gaze fixed on the skyline. "They put you and your son in the middle. I'm going to cut the cord that holds them all." The drive north into Wisconsin was silent. A numb 6-hour journey through flat, dark farmland. They were now in a log cabin on the shore of Silver Birch Lake. It was a high-end safe house, isolated, owned by one of Armin's holding companies. The only sound was the crackle of a large stone fireplace. Milo was asleep on a deep leather sofa, his small body curled around an old, threadbare teddy bear. He was finally truly safe, at least for the night. The adrenaline had drained from Lila, leaving a bone-deep weariness and a sharp, cold clarity. She stood by the fire, watching the flames, rubbing her arms. The dive she had taken in the food depot had left a long, ragged scrape on her forearm, which was now beginning to sting. "You're hurt." Armin's voice was quiet. He was beside her, holding a small first aid kit. He did not wait for her permission, but gently took her arm, his touch surprisingly light. He sat her on the hearth, kneeling in front of her, and began to clean the wound with an antiseptic wipe. His focus was absolute, his movements economical and precise. The same hands that could order death were now impossibly gentle. Lila watched the top of his head, the dark, thick hair. The proximity was unnerving. "Which one are you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He looked up, his dark eyes meeting hers. The firelight flickered in them. What do you mean? Are you the monster they write about, or are you the man who saved my son, or are they both the same person? Armin paused, the wipe hovering over her skin. He looked at her arm, not her eyes. I am the man who does what is necessary. That's not an answer, Lila insisted, her voice gaining strength. I saw a man die today, a police officer. He was corrupt, but he was executed in a food depot. He was executed by the Costa Syndicate, Armin corrected her, his voice hard. The same men who ambushed us at the diner. The same men who have a corrupt deputy chief in their pocket. The server they want, the one Kincaid and the FCIB think is just about tax evasion. He applied a bandage, his fingers brushing her skin. Those are the real ledgers. They contain the payroll, the hours, and the pension contributions for over 200 dock workers, men with families. If Costa and Halcombe get that data, they won't just shut me down. They'll bankrupt every one of those families, seize their pensions, and take over the ports. I'm keeping those ledgers to pay my people, not to hide. So you're a savior, Lila said, the word tasting bitter. I'm a man protecting his legacy, he said, finishing the bandage. Your brother, Lila said suddenly. Narek, the picture in the diner. Armin's face shuddered. Inessa had given them the briefing in the car. Narek believed peace was possible, Armin said, his voice low. He went to negotiate with the Costas. Against my orders, he disappeared. Inessa found the trail. Talon Reed is holding him, the man you knew. He's trying to trade my brother's life for that server. Armin stood, moving to the window, looking out at the dark, frozen lake. I'm sorry I brought this into your life, and Lila, I never intended for you or for Milo. He stopped. He rubbed the back of his neck. My mother, she ran a bakery in the city. Lavash, small, hot, smelled of cardamom. All she ever wanted was a normal life, a quiet one. But I was born into this heritage. It traps you. Lila stood up, the anger returning, cold and sharp. Heritage. That's a luxury. Armin, do you know what my heritage is? It's a stack of medical bills from a hospital that wants to garnish my wages because my son needs to breathe. It's a phantom father who left because a baby was inconvenient. I don't have the luxury of choosing a side. The only thing I have ever chosen, every single day, is him. She gestured to Milo, who stirred, his breathing soft and even. Lila went to him, pulling the thick wool blanket up over his shoulders, tucking it gently around his chin. Armin watched her. He watched her hand smooth Milo's hair. And in that moment, the entire axis of his world shifted. He had been fighting for abstract concepts, legacy, honor, the outfit. She was fighting for the tangible, immediate, sacred peace of a sleeping child. He had been protecting a name. She was protecting a life. We need new rules, Lila said, turning back to him, her face set. If I'm in this, if my son is in this, we do it my way, a moral commitment. Armin waited. No one shoots first, Lila said, her voice absolute. We defend, we respond, we finish it, but we do not start the violence. And Milo, he is never a shield, he's never a bargaining chip. He's never in the room when the guns come out. Armin looked at her, truly seeing the steel beneath the waitress uniform. Agreed. A laptop on the kitchen counter chimed. It was Inessa, who'd been running traces from a remote location. Armin's phone buzzed. He picked it up. It's a location, Armin said, his body going tense. Narek's burner phone. It just pinged. One signal, then dark. A warehouse on the Calumet River. He looked at Lila. It's a trap. Or it's a chance, Lila countered. He nodded, already moving, checking a weapon he had retrieved from a lockbox. This was the moment. He had to go. Lila stepped in front of him. She put one hand flat on her own chest, feeling the steady beat of her heart. She took a deep, centering breath. If we go, she said, her voice clear and unbroken, we come back, all three. Armin stopped. He heard the word. Lila, you are staying here with your son. She's right. Inessa's voice, startling, came from the laptop speakers. They expect you. Armin, they expect your men. They will be waiting for soldiers. They will not be waiting for a waitress. She's the one person who can get close. Lila met Armin's gaze. He's your brother, and Talon knows me. He trusts me, or he pities me. I'm your way in. Armin looked at her, at the fierce, terrifying resolve in her eyes. She was no longer a victim. She was a participant. For the first time in his life, he was letting someone else set the tempo of the fight. He gave a single, sharp nod. Lila glanced out the window. Small, white flakes were beginning to drift down from the black sky, landing on the dark, frozen water. It's starting to snow. Time itself seemed to hold its breath, frozen, before the plunge into the long, dark night. The decision was made. The air in the cabin was heavy with it, heavy with the promise of the Calumet River warehouse. Lila sat on the stone hearth, her knees drawn up, watching the flames. The heat painted a flush on her cheeks, but she felt cold, hollowed out by the choice she had just made. She was still wearing the thick wool sweater from the drive, a fragile armor. Armin moved, the sound of his boots soft on the wooden floor. She felt him behind her, a shadow blocking the firelight. He did not speak. He simply draped a thin, soft blanket over her shoulders, his knuckles brushing the side of her neck. The contact was brief, accidental, but it sent a current through her that was sharper than the cold. He sat on the hearth near her, not touching, but the space between them was compressed, charged. His gaze dropped to her forearm, to the white bandage he had applied earlier. He reached out, his fingers tracing the edge of the gauze, a touch so light it was almost not a touch at all. "Does it still hurt?" His voice was low, a rumble beneath the crackle of the logs. Lila looked at his hand, then at his face. The firelight softened the hard planes, but his eyes were dark, intense. "It hurts less," she said, her voice just as quiet, "less when you are here." A small silence settled. He lifted his hand, not to pull away, but moving toward her face. "You have... Wait." He leaned in. Lila held her breath, his fingers, the same ones that had been so precise with the bandage, deftly plucked a single pine needle from the strands of her hair, caught there since the frantic rush from the car. He held it up for a second, a tiny green spike against the orange light, then let it fall into the flames. He did not pull back. Their eyes locked. His gaze was stripped of all pretense, all command. It was just assessment, but this time it was laced with something new, wonder, vulnerability. Lila found her own breathing had slowed, aligning with his, a shared silent rhythm in the quiet room. Her own hand, the one that was not bandaged, moved. It was trembling, but she willed it steady. She did not reach for his face. She placed her palm flat against the inside of his wrist, where she had seen the pulse beating earlier. She felt it now, strong and accelerated, thump, thump, thump under her skin. It was not the calm, cold rhythm of a killer. It was the pulse of a man who was afraid, of a man who wanted, desperately, to survive. He closed his eyes at her touch. He leaned forward, closing the last few inches, and rested his forehead against hers. It was a complete, mutual surrender. Skin against skin, he smelled of the cold night air, of antiseptic, and faintly of the gasoline that had clung to him since Chicago. He breathed in, a long, slow inhalation, and she breathed out, her own breath warming his face. The kiss, when it came, was not a demand. It was a question, a confirmation. His lips brushed hers, impossibly soft, a stark contrast to the violence of his world. It was the kiss of a drowning man finding air. He pulled back, just a fraction, opening his eyes to see hers. They were open, watching him. He was asking for permission. Lila gave her answer. She rose up on her knees, shifting on the hearth, and closed the distance. She kissed him back. It was not a kiss of passion, but of profound, aching necessity. It was a promise, made in the dark, to return from the warehouse. Lila's hand moved from his wrist, sliding up his arm to grip his shoulder, pulling him closer. The fire popped, a log collapsing in on itself, sending a shower of bright embers up the chimney. Armin's hand, the one that had held the pine needle, moved. It traced the line of her jaw, his thumb brushing her cheekbone, as if learning the map of her face. His touch traveled, slow and deliberate, over her shoulder, settling on her arm. Every touch was a question, and Lila answered by leaning into it, a silent nod. He gently eased her back, not onto the cold floor, but onto the thick, plush bearskin rug that lay before the fireplace. He followed, half lying beside her, propped on one elbow, keeping his body angled toward her. He gathered the blanket he had given her, pulling it over them both, a shield against the night, against what was to come. They lay there for a long time, the fire warming their faces. They were still fully dressed, still wrapped in the armor of their clothes and blankets. "I'm terrified," Lila whispered, her voice aimed at the space between them. "I have never been this scared in my entire life, but I trust you. I don't know why, but I do." Armin looked at her, his expression unguarded, almost pained in the flickering light. "I am the thing people are afraid of. Lila, I have been my entire life. But I want to be different." His gaze flickered to the sofa where Milo slept. This is not the world I want." Lila threaded her fingers through his. Their hands rested on the edge of the blanket, their knuckles illuminated by the fire, a bond forged in chaos. On the kitchen counter, a small red light blinked on a charging cradle, the walkie-talkie, a silent, insistent pulse, reminding them that dawn was coming. The price for this moment would be paid. As if sensing the shift, Milo murmured in his sleep. He turned over, his small face illuminated. Instantly, the tension broke. A soft, shared smile passed between Lila and Armin. It was not the smile of new, reckless lovers. It was the weary, protective smile of parents. Armin rose in one fluid motion and walked to the sofa. He gently adjusted the blanket over Milo's shoulder, his large, scarred hand brushing the boy's hair back from his forehead. Lila joined him, standing beside Armin, looking at her son. They stood together, a silent, united front. Armin looked past them, out the large picture window. The snow was falling faster now, a thick white curtain erasing the world. "Look," he said softly. Lila followed his gaze. There, in the fresh, untouched powder near the cabin's porch, were their footprints from when they had arrived. 3 distinct sets, side by side, already beginning to fill with new snow. A man, a woman, and a child, a temporary family, formed in the eye of the storm. The Calumet River warehouse was a steel skeleton, black against the bruised purple of the pre-dawn sky. Inside, Inessa's voice, digitized and calm, came through Lila's tiny, flesh-colored earpiece. "The plan is a 3-legged stool," Inessa confirmed from her remote command post. "Leg 1, I've baited Talon's crypto wallet with a bonus from a new shell company. He thinks he's about to get a second payday. He's greedy, so he'll be there to secure it." Lila sat in the passenger seat of a battered blue van, 2 miles from the target. She wore a dark gray jumpsuit with a North Star Fab Lab patch on the chest. She'd spent the last hour practicing. "I was just here for the drop," she murmured, swallowing the tea in just. "Got the new gyro components." "Leg 2, Inessa continued. "Armin is positioned on the perimeter. He'll make superficial contact with the Costa sentries, offering a negotiation for his brother. It's a distraction, designed to pull their attention to the front gate." "And leg 3, Lila finished, her own voice tight. "Me, the delivery girl. I walk in the service entrance with a case of specialty components." Armin's voice cut in, rougher, from a second channel. "If he even hesitates, Lila, if he smells a trap, you walk. You drop the case and you walk. My brother or not, we agreed." "I know the rules," Lila said, clipping the pen camera to her breast pocket. No one shoots first. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, in a darkened surveillance van, Agent Avery Kincaid bypassed a Port Authority security panel. She was alone. "Damn it, come on," she muttered, splicing a wire. The MVCU had shut down the official camera feeds to the dock, citing Halcomb's security protocols. But Kincaid was tapping the raw power line. That waitress, Lila, had pushed a trucker out of the way of a ricochet at the Blue Comet. Saved his life. The report had buried it. Avery owed her one. "There," she whispered, as a small, grainy feed of the dock's main loading bay flickered to life on her monitor. She was getting her own, independent evidence. Lila took a breath and stepped out of the van. She pushed a heavy-duty cart carrying a single, locked Pelican case. She walked through the unguarded service door. The warehouse was vast and cold, smelling of rust and the sluggish river. Talon Reed was there, standing near a laptop on a drum barrel, flanked by 2 bored-looking Costa guards. He was jittery, high on his own cleverness. "Lila, what are you doing here?" he asked, his surprise genuine. "Talon," she said, letting her own exhaustion show. "They cut my hours after the shootout. I took a job with North Star. I'm just doing the delivery." She forced the accent. Talon laughed, relaxing. "From waitress to tech mule, figures." He was showing off. "You're lucky you're not in the line of fire like me. I'm playing games you can't even imagine." To prove it, he tapped his laptop. A file opened, an audio recording. A new voice, crisp and official, filled the air. "The payment from Cumulus Freight is confirmed. We move on Durian at the diner. The Costas will provide the diversion. We secure the server in the chaos." Lila felt her blood freeze. Talon was gloating. "That," he said, "is Deputy Chief Ren Halcomb of the MVCU, sealing his deal with the syndicate. I've got him. I've got everyone." Lila let her eyes drift past him. In the far corner, chained to a support beam, was a man. Narek. He was thin, bruised, but his eyes were sharp. He saw her. He recognized the flicker of shock. Lila's hand slipped, and she fumbled the cart, knocking the Pelican case to the floor. "Oh, God, I'm so sorry. Talon, please." As she bent to pick it up, Narek subtly dragged his chained foot through a patch of oil on the concrete floor. He drew a small circle, then a single line pointing to the rear roll-up door, a bomb, at the back door. Lila fumbled again, this time with the pen in her pocket. It clattered to the floor, rolling. "I'm such a mess." She picked it up, but not before she had tilted it, sweeping its lens across a small, blinking keypad wired to a C4 brick on the wall Narek had indicated. "Got it?" Inessa's voice breathed in her ear. "Bomb control panel, it's armed. He's wired the exits. I'm in. Disabling the first layer safety protocols. It's the best I can do." "What's that?" one of the Costa guards said, stepping forward. He'd seen her earpiece. "She's wired." Talon's face turned from arrogance to panic. He grabbed his own gun. Suddenly, alarms blared. Bright white floodlights snapped on, blinding everyone, turning the shadowy warehouse into a sterile, bright stage. "Costa," Armin's voice boomed from a loudspeaker at the main gate. He stepped into the light, his hands raised, his body silhouetted. "I'm unarmed. I'm here to make a deal. My brother for the man who is betraying you both, Deputy Chief Halcomb." Talon laughed, a high-pitched, hysterical sound. "You idiots! You think I'll let you make a deal?" He was trapped between 2 sides. "Why take one payday when I can have everything?" He raised his pistol and fired a single shot into the steel rafters. The shot did nothing, except activate the bomb. A high-pitched beep began, and a digital timer on the main support beam lit up, its red numbers flashing 0500. "Everyone loses," Talon screamed, grabbing his laptop and running for a side door. Armin was already moving. He sprinted toward Narek. "Lila, get out!" But Lila was not running. She saw the heavy industrial chain on Narek's ankle. Armin was pulling at him, but the lock was solid. Lila grabbed a steel crowbar from a nearby toolkit. She jammed the tip into the shackle link. "Pull!" she screamed at Armin. Armin yanked Narek, and Lila put all her weight on the bar. The metal shrieked, the shackles snapped open. At that exact second, the massive, corrugated front gate of the warehouse imploded. A 40-foot container truck, its horn blaring, roared into the building, driven by Levon, his face a mask of healed-over rage. "Get in," he bellowed, skidding the truck to a halt beside them. Armin threw Narek into the passenger seat and then grabbed Lila, half lifting, half throwing her into the cab after him. He jumped in as Levon slammed the truck into reverse. They rocketed out of the warehouse, past the confused Costa guards, just as the timer hit 0. The explosion was deafening, a shockwave that blew the truck's rear windows out. Miles away, Avery Kincaid watched her monitor. The independent camera, safe from the blast, had recorded it all. Talon's gloating confession, the audio of Ren Halcom, the bomb's activation. The entire conspiracy captured. The wind had not just turned. It was now a hurricane. Agent Avery Kincaid, backed by 2 uniformed MVCU officers from Internal Affairs, walked into Deputy Chief Ren Halcom's sprawling office. The panoramic view of the Chicago skyline seemed to mock them. Avery placed a small, encrypted hard drive on his desk. It contained the unedited footage from the Calumet warehouse. "This is the recording of you," Avery stated, her voice cold, "conspiring with Talon Reed and members of the Costa Syndicate, resulting in the death of Officer Isaac Rowe." Halcom did not even look at the drive. He leaned back in his leather chair, a picture of calm arrogance. He steepled his fingers. "And you will never, ever use it." "Excuse me. You think you are the first idealist to walk in here with a gotcha moment?" Halcom chuckled, a dry, papery sound. "You bring me down. Agent, you bring down the entire department when you invalidate every case I've overseen for 20 years. You destroy the city's budget. You hand the upcoming mayoral election to the radicals. You do not dare pull this thread, because you know the entire tapestry will unravel." He gestured to the door. "Your political theater is over." Kincaid stood there, legally armed but utterly disarmed. The system was protecting the rot. In the sterile confines of a new safe house, Armin already knew the outcome. He's right, they won't touch him. "So he wins!" Lila's voice was ragged with disbelief. "After everything He wins that game," Armin said, looking at Inessa, who held a different hard drive. "So we play a new one. This is the final move." "The real ledgers," Inessa said. Lila's blood ran cold. "Armin, no. You leak that. You give the FCIB everything they need to put you away for life." "We are not leaking the criminal accounts," Armin corrected her. "We are leaking the truth. The payroll ledgers for the 200 dock workers. The pension funds Halcom and Costa were planning to drain. We give it to the union. We give it to the press. We cut the cancer out by showing the city exactly who was being robbed." "And the part they want," Lila asked, her voice quiet, "the part that makes you the target." "I will give it to them," Armin said. "I will admit to my own share, the tax fraud, the minor evasions. I will accept the charges. It is enough to be a crime. It is enough to satisfy them." "Absolutely not." Lila stepped in front of him, her eyes flashing. "You are not a scapegoat. You are not a sacrifice for a system that is just as dirty as they are. You did not set that bomb. You did not kill Rowe." "This is not for them," Armin said, his voice dropping, his hands finding hers, steadying them. "This is for Milo." She stopped, breathing. "I choose this. Lila, I choose to end the war. I take the plea. I become a man who reforms the ports, not a man who runs them from the shadows. I do this so that your son can go to his school and walk down the street and never, ever have to look over his shoulder. He will not be attached to my name." The plan was set in motion. Inessa delivered the safe deposit box to Avery Kincaid, the full, damning warehouse video. The quid pro quo, the FCIB would guarantee full witness protection for Lila and Milo, and more importantly, post a massive, anonymous whistleblower bounty within the MVCU for anyone else willing to testify against Halcom. With their government protection gone, the Costa Syndicate dissolved back into the shadows. But Talon Reed, fugitive and technologist, was not finished. A deep fake video surfaced 2 days later. It was brilliant and devastating. Grainy, manufactured security footage showed Armin meeting with a known Costa lieutenant. The audio, a perfect digital clone of Armin's voice, was clear. Take Halcom out of the picture. Make it look like a setup. No loose ends. The narrative shifted overnight. Armin Durian not a victim, but the puppet master. Lila watched the news reports from the safety of a suburban apartment. She looked out the window. In the small yard, Milo was playing. He was on a swing, laughing. He was in a new preschool. His asthma, away from the city grime and the diner, was stable. He pumped his legs, pushing himself higher, a picture of pure, uncomplicated joy. This was the only thing that mattered. That evening, the host of a popular local investigative podcast, Lakewind Radio, announced a breaking interview. We have an anonymous caller. She was at the Blue Comet. She was in the warehouse. We are calling her Comet Mom. Lila's voice, digitally filtered but steady, cut through the static. The deep fake is a lie. I know the man who made it, Talon Reed, and he made mistakes. He doesn't know the small things. He doesn't know about the photograph. What photograph? The host asked. The one Armin carries of his missing brother, Narek, Lila said. I saw it at the diner before the shooting. I touched it. It had a smell. The acrid smell of smoke from a device Talon had tried to destroy. That's not in the deepfake. How else do you know it's him? His voice, Lila said, the memory sharp. Talon was the traitor on the radio, directing the attack. I knew his accent. He's from Joliet. When he gets nervous, he swallows his T's. When he doesn't say, it's a trap, he says, I's a trap. Go back and listen to the clean audio Talon gave the police. It's there. He's the one. She had taken the public narrative and broken it with the simple, verifiable truth. The tide turned instantly. The deep fake was discredited. The dock workers' union, armed with Armin's leaked payroll data, began public protests. Armin stood on the steps of the federal courthouse. He was wearing the suit again. It is done, he said to Lila, who stood just out of sight. The FCIB has accepted the plea. I self-report the tax fraud. In exchange, I get a suspended sentence and I will oversee the new harbor renewal compact. I am out, Lila, and you are free. He touched her face, his gaze holding hers. Take the protection, take Milo, and go. Forget my name. And us, she whispered, her heart feeling like it was tearing. We were the only part that was real, he said. He turned and walked up the steps, a man surrendering to save everyone but himself. Lila watched him disappear into the cold, stone building, their new, fragile love being sacrificed to the law. She turned to leave, her body numb. Her phone vibrated, a text from an unknown number. It was a photograph. Milo, at his new preschool, taken from outside the chain-link fence. The text below it read, You think it's over, Mama. One last night, the old Des Plaines River Waterworks. Come alone. You want to see your kids safe again. You'll be there. Talon. He was not running. He was desperate. And he had found them. The text message was a digital execution. It arrived the second Armand Durian. His shoulders squared, disappeared inside the federal courthouse to accept his plea. Lila's phone vibrated with the image Milo at his new preschool, his face bright, seen through the diamond shapes of a chain-link fence. A cold, specific terror, sharper than any bullet, pierced Lila's chest. Talon. The text below it. You think it's over, Mama. One last night, the old Des Plaines River Waterworks. Come alone. You want to see your kids safe again. You'll be there. She looked at the courthouse. Armin was inside, sacrificing his name to buy their freedom. If she told him, if he violated his plea agreement, he would go to prison for life. This was not his fight. He had finished his war. This one was hers. She walked away from the courthouse, her steps mechanical, in her boot. A small, folding knife was nestled against her ankle. She had started carrying it after the depot. She did not hail a cab. She took the bus, the anonymous rhythm of the city hiding her, a ghost on her way to a final reckoning. The Des Plaines River Waterworks was a cathedral of rust and decay. The river, swollen with recent rain, lapped at the building's cracked concrete foundation. She walked in through a gap where a steel door had been. It was dark, smelling of mold and river water. Talon was waiting. He stood on a high catwalk, illuminated by the sickly yellow glow of a single battery-powered lantern. He looked terrible. His clothes were ragged, his eyes wide and manic. He was a man with nothing left. "Lila," he hissed, his voice echoing. "The ghost, you just keep coming back." He gestured to a laptop perched on a rusted console. "Look." He tapped a key. The screen lit up. It was Milo. He was in a small, dark room, his knees drawn up, looking terrified. It was a live feed. Lila's breath hitched. "No." "It's a storage room. At his school," Talon said, his voice trembling. "I hacked their system, locked him in. No one will find him until morning, unless—" "Unless what?" Lila said, her voice a low growl. "The server keys. The real ones. Inessa was smart. She split them. Armin has half, but you have the other. The access key to the crypto wallet. I know he gave it to you. The one thing he wouldn't trust to anyone else. Give it to me, Lila, or the kid stays in the dark." Lila had to keep him talking. She had to find a way. "This isn't you. Talon, this is not the person I knew." "The person you knew is gone," he screamed. "I remember," she said, her voice steady, projecting. "In high school, in the band room. My flute key was bent. I was crying because I couldn't play in the concert. You sat with me. You spent 2 hours with spare parts in a tiny file. You fixed it. You told me. You told me technology was supposed to help people, to fix things." He actually faltered. His hand, hovering over the laptop, dropped. That was a long time ago. They changed the rules. Lila. "No!" a new voice roared. "You changed." Headlights flooded the vast room. An engine screamed. An FCIB tactical van smashed through the rotten plywood covering a loading bay. Agent Avery Kincaid was at the wheel, and in the passenger seat, uncuffed, was Levon. Armin burst out of the side door, his face a mask of cold fury. "How?" Talon stammered, looking at the trap closing. Armin looked at Levon, then at Avery. "It was Inessa's plan. Levon walked into Kincaid's office an hour ago. He betrayed me, told her I'd gone rogue, that I was coming here to kill Talon and retrieve the crypto keys. It was the only way to force her hand, to get her to pull a valid warrant now, completely bypassing Halcom's chain of command." Talon shrieked, a sound of pure animal rage. "You don't win, none of you!" He slammed his fist onto a remote detonator. The catwalk exploded. A deafening roar ripped through the building. The steel supports buckled, the ancient floor groaned, and the river, held back for decades, won. A wall of black, freezing water burst through the foundation, flooding the ground floor in seconds. Talon grabbed his laptop, which was in a waterproof satchel. He ran, not for the door, but for a collapsed section of the wall. Tied to a pillar was a jet ski. He jumped onto it, the engine roaring to life. "The laptop!" Lila screamed. "He has the wallet!" Talon gunned the engine, heading for the open hole in the wall. Lila did not hesitate. She launched herself, not at Talon, but at the handlebars, grabbing them, putting all her weight into turning the machine. The jet ski spun, out of control. Lila lost her grip, falling backward into the surging, icy water. "Lila," Armin's voice was a raw tear in the night. He had been on the platform above, but he jumped, a 5-meter drop into the churning blackness, hitting the water just as she went under. He grabbed her, pulling her up. She came up sputtering, choking, the cold so intense it stole her breath. The impact of the water, the violent fall, had dislodged the folding knife from her boot. It was in her hand, the blade slick. Talon circled back, his face contorted. The laptop bag was strapped across his chest. He was going to run them down. As Armin held her, keeping her head above the debris-filled water, Lila saw the strap. "Hold me," she yelled. Armin anchored her. As Talon sped past, Lila used her last ounce of strength, surging up and slashed. The knife blade was true. It cut the strap clean. The satchel flew free, landing on a small, stable patch of floating debris. Talon screamed. He abandoned the jet ski, leaping through the water at her. He grabbed her hair, yanking her head back, forcing her under. Armin moved. It was not a fight. It was an execution. He grabbed Talon's arm, the one holding Lila. There was a sound, a wet, heavy snap. Talon shrieked as his wrist broke. Armin released him, and Talon fell back, choking. The monster was here. Armin's face was terrifying. He raised his fist to strike the final, killing blow. Armin, Lila choked out, grabbing his arm. He froze. His entire body was shaking with adrenaline and pure, murderous rage. He looked at her, his eyes black. "Stop!" she gasped. "Stop here!" The violence drained from his eyes. The man she knew returned. He nodded. Once. Lila fumbled in her pocket, the heavy-duty zip tie, and Nessa's preparation. She bound Talon's good hand to his broken one. She shoved him toward the shallows, where Avery Kincaid was wading in, her gun drawn. "He's all yours, Agent," and Lila spat, pushing Talon at her. "By the book, we'll take the rest." The ruined building was now illuminated by flashing red and blue lights. The air filled with sirens. Avery's radio crackled. "All units, secondary target is in custody. Deputy Chief Halcomb apprehended 2 blocks north, attempting to access and wipe departmental logs. The clean MVCU had its man." Armin waded through the water, pulling Lila with him. They collapsed onto a dry patch of concrete, both shivering violently, soaked to the bone. The adrenaline was gone, leaving only the crushing cold. He looked at her, his face pale, his breath misting. Lila reached up, her own hand trembling so hard she could barely control it. She laid her palm against his cheek. "We didn't shoot first," she whispered, her teeth chattering, "and we survived." The hearing room was not a courtroom. It was a public audit, broadcast live, and the atmosphere was electric. Agent Avery Kincaid, her voice a precise instrument, laid out the entire conspiracy. She presented the unedited warehouse footage, the audio files of Deputy Chief Halcomb, and the irrefutable crypto trail from Cumulus Freight straight to Talon Reed. Armin Durian sat at the witness table, his lawyers beside him, but he was not there to fight. When his turn came, he spoke, his voice clear. He accepted full civil liability for the financial discrepancies on his ledgers. He did not make excuses. He agreed to pay, in full, the reparation sum, which was directed not to the city, but into the pension fund for the dock workers whose futures had been threatened. In return, the FCIB and the state's attorney announced the agreement. Armin Durian would not be prosecuted for the criminal charges that had been superseded by the larger conspiracy. Instead, he would become the chief civilian supervisor for the newly formed, experimental Harbor Renewal Compact. He would use his expertise to clean up the very system he had once manipulated. The final nail in the deepfake's coffin came from Narek. He held his own press conference, standing beside his brother. He was pale, but his eyes were steady. The video that claimed my brother was a murderer was a lie. For a long time, my brother and I were on different paths, but when it mattered, when he had the choice to run or to save me, he came. He chose to do the right thing. It was late, but he did it. The MVCU was gutted, Halcomb was formally indicted, the new acting chief promised a full internal investigation. Avery Kincaid, watching from the back of the room, was approached by a reporter. "Is this justice?" Agent Avery shook her head. "Justice isn't a performance. It's not one big moment. It's a series of specific, difficult choices. Today, the right choices were finally made." Weeks later, Armin stood outside the federal building, his suspended sentence finalized. He loosened his tie. He was no longer a boss in the old sense. He was not a simple citizen. He was a man occupying the gray space in between, a man who had accepted his past and, in doing so, had been granted a fragile path toward the light. He was just Armin, and he was learning to walk. The Blue Comet Diner reopened. The cracked windows were replaced, the flickering neon sign repaired. But Lila had made a change. On weekdays, it served the truckers. But on weekends, the menu disappeared. It became a community kitchen, offering free, hot meals to the families of the port workers who'd been laid off during the transition. The operation funded entirely by the reparations Armin had paid. Above the door, she hung a new, hand-painted sign, "No one eats alone." It was a Sunday evening. The last of the families had gone home, the diner quiet and smelling of warm bread and bleach. Lila was wiping down the counter when she heard the sound of the industrial sprayer in the back. She walked into the kitchen. Armin was there, his back to her, standing at the deep steel sink. His suit jacket was gone. His sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing his forearms as he blasted the last of the sheet pans. Steam rose around him. Lila smiled, a small, tired smile. She picked up a towel and stood beside him, drying the pans as he washed them. They worked in a comfortable, domestic silence. The only sounds the hiss of the water and the clatter of metal. He shut off the water and handed her the last pan. A single drop of warm water clung to his wrist. Lila paused. She set the towel down. Then, with her bare fingers, she gently wiped the drop away, her touch lingering on his skin. He stopped, his hands still in the sink, and looked at her. "Mom?" The kitchen door flew open. Milo ran in, his face bright with excitement. He did not run to Lila. He launched himself at Armin, wrapping his small arms around Armin's waist, burying his face in his shirt. "You promised," Milo's voice was muffled. "You said we could—" Armin dried his hands, a look of new, easy affection on his face. He looked at Lila over Milo's head. "Promised what, little one?" "The kite. You said you'd teach me how to make a kite, a real one, that can fly high." Armin looked down at the boy, and he placed one large hand on Milo's hair, for the first time since Lila had met him. She saw the decades of shadow, the weight of his legacy, completely lift from his eyes. They were not dark, they were clear, they were light. He nodded. "We will." Later that night, they stood on the small back porch of the diner. The air was cool, the sky clear. Milo was inside, asleep on the cot, dreaming of kites. "He loves you," Lila said quietly. "The feeling is new," Armin admitted. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a single, plain brass key. He pressed it into her palm. Lila looked at it, then at him, confused. "Armin, I can't—" "It is a small house," he said quickly, his voice sincere. "It overlooks the river, near the new port. It is not to hold you. Lila, it is not a cage. It is yours. The deed is in your name. After everything, you and Milo deserve a place that is truly, completely safe, if you want it." Lila looked at the key in her hand. She looked at his face, at the fear in his eyes, not fear of bullets, but the fear of rejection. She stepped forward, rising on her toes. She cupped his face and gave him a short, certain kiss. It was not a kiss of desperation or of survival. It was a kiss of arrival. She pulled back, her hand closing tightly around the key, her other hand resting on his heart. "We choose our line, Armin," she whispered, "every single day, and my line is right here." He closed his eyes, a lifetime of tension releasing from his shoulders. The view pulled back, lifting away from the small diner porch, rising high above the rusted-out landscape of Joliet. It swept east toward the Chicago skyline, a dark silhouette against a magnificent, burning orange sunset. And there, against the vibrant color, 3 small shapes danced, 3 kites soaring in the evening wind. Their strings were taut, pulling against the earth, but they were strong, and they were flying. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are listening from, so please comment below to connect with us and share your thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.